What I'm going to be talking about now is the different ages, the history, the ancient history of the rocks that we map. We talked about stratigraphy. That's the lower rocks are older than the ones on top, which are younger. Well, that's just a nice simple relative age just based on superposition. But now let's talk about what's in those rocks. For instance, right here we have a spirifer from the Devonian period. And when we find these types of spirifers, we know we're in the Middle Devonian. They, of course, change through time. So this is a fossil that's a good index fossil for us when we find it in southern Illinois in the Devonian limestones, because this animal lived in the ancient seaway. I'll show you a little bit about the morphology of this animal. It's kind of like a seashell, but it's called a brachiopod. It's not a bivalve. It's not a mollusk. It is a brachiopod. It's in its own phylum. And it has this big wide hinge area. And this is one valve called the brachial valve. And then this other valve back here is called the pedicle valve. And they would attach to the seafloor through a little hole here, and a muscle-like structure would come out and attach. So they were sessile. That means they lived on the seafloor. They were attached. The age of the Devonian of this particular fossil here is about 390 to 380 million years, roughly. All right, now let's go up in time. As we go up into time, we have the Mississippian period. This is a marine coral, and you can see all these long, straight coral polyps that are coming out, and they terminate with the little septa, and this is very similar to coral today in the ocean. These are very indicative of what we call the St. Louis limestone, which is Mississippian in age. And so when we find these types of animals, we know we're dealing with the Mississippian age. Sometimes these occur in fairly large coral heads that can be about 3 or 4 feet in diameter. Very large, bulbous, rounded coral heads. This being Mississippian, then we're coming up into time about 340 or so million years in geologic time. This is a trace fossil, and it's like an almond shaped, and it's from the Pennsylvanian time. Shows an actual trace that was a bivalve. It was a mollusk that sat right in this area. That's what we're seeing that. So we're seeing a resting trace, which is called cubincnia. It means it's just resting in place there, of a bivalve that was back about 310 million years ago in the Pennsylvanian. So we've got a progression through time with all these various fossils, and the fossils can tell us relatively where we are in the rock column in geologic time. And they can also, because they're characters of the rocks, they can also help us with the actual formations. These we can pretty much say we're in the Cherry Valley formation of the Devonian. When we find these, we're in the St. Louis limestone, near St. Louis, and also throughout the basin where that seaway occurred. And when we find these Lachia, we know we're in the Pennsylvanian. So they can really help to tell rock type you're dealing with as well. This really helps us with our stratigraphy, because then we can stack things up and we can correlate. We can correlate from one rock type to another. If I find more of these 30, 40, 50, 100 miles away, I'll know that, this is the Devonian over here, and we can correlate them together. Likewise with all the other types. They are really good indexes for time. As I was talking about stratigraphy, your Devonian age rocks would be down in this area, actually a little bit off this map. It'll be a little bit off that map because we did other maps in the area where there was Devonian. There is no Devonian on this quadrangle, but there is Mississippian, which was right down here. And the Pennsylvanian would be up in this blue area, mainly all the Pennsylvanian in the blue here. So we would find these types of fossils in these places. Of course, this one would be off the map. Now that you see the fossils on the map, where in fact some don't even occur on the map, you can actually see progression of age and the differences. You see more color down here, which is all your Mississippian, and then all of this blue would be your Pennsylvanian. So you actually get to see a progression of age. You actually get a representation of the history of this map.